Hey folks, Mark Emery here. You're probably aware that I started the Lighthouse Law Club several years ago as a result of spending a good part of my life fighting for freedom based on using the law. The law is in our favor if we can only use it and get some silly judge to pay attention to it, right? Um, I've kind of veered away from those tactics simply because of the corruption in the courts. But we're at a point right now in regards to this lockdown that we have been attacked. The damage that is being caused by this lockdown is far greater than if we had been physically attacked by foreign military forces. It's just uncountable, insurmountable damage. And experts are saying it's unlikely that we may ever fully recover, right? So this is a very serious situation and one that we need to really be ashamed of ourselves for allowing it to have happened. You know, we've been like little puppy dogs. As soon as the governor or the mayor says something, we roll over waiting for a little belly rub or a snack or something, just like a little dog. All right? Where has the discernment gone with the free people of this world, and in particular, the American people? Where has the discernment gone where we draw the line on other parties stepping on our rights? These are God-given rights, inalienable rights, rights that cannot be taken away, rights that cannot be compromised in any way. And we allow this to happen while we watch the country be destroyed without the firing of a single bullet. We need to be ashamed of ourselves. And insofar as that goes, it's time for us to resolve this matter and really understand part of what's going on here. All right, now I recently did a tutorial video just last week called the Resistance Boot Camp, which was a little tutorial on how individuals can stand up and protect their rights when they're confronted by someone who wants to abuse those rights. Okay? So that was for individuals, and one astute follower who saw that video said, Mark, you know, the ones really under attack are the businesses. It's the businesses that need to figure out how to fight back against this, how to survive, how to say no in the proper way, where they have standing and authority. And you know, that's absolutely right. So today, that's what I want to talk about as briefly as I can as it relates to businesses. Okay? Now, the first thing we have to understand is the difference between operating in the public and in the private. And I know most of you understand that already, but there's a huge difference between operating in the public and operating in the private. Okay? So one of the questions that comes up is, how do these municipal corporations, they're not governments, the city, the county, the state, they're not governments. They're municipal corporations. They're legal fictions that operate for their own purposes and their own good. These are private businesses, you could say. When's the last time your local private corporation, aka government, has done anything good for the people in the people's interests? Or do they do the interests of others, foreigners, moneyed interests? All right? It's all a corrupt cabal at the top, and we have to understand that. These municipal corporations are not governments for the people. They are private corporations being operated for profit for those who are involved. And the unending, growing, mountainous list of regulations, statutory code that elicit fees, fines, penalties, taxes are nothing more. They're not there for the public good. They're there to rape the public. You are the public. You are the victim. You are the suspect, the unsuspecting victim walking down the lily path, unbeknownst to you that you'll be pounced on at any given moment, and the highway robbers will take whatever they can get their hands on. All right? Those are the legal fictions in municipal corporations operating for their own benefit at your expense. Okay? If you recall, in history, if you're old enough to remember, if not, look up in the history books. In the old days, there were mayors who were elected. Today, what do you have? You have city managers who are appointed, and they're not accountable to the people. They're city managers for the city corporation, the municipal corporation, who is there to extract the substance from your life. And they don't care how they do it. They don't care the impact that they have on your life or your family or your future. They're there to do one thing, to extract your substance. All right? So we no longer have justice of the peace in most jurisdictions. In some jurisdictions, they do exist, but they operate at the behest of the municipal corporation. They don't operate on behalf of a juristic government, an at-law government. Okay? An at-law government doesn't exist anymore because the people have forgotten how to operate it. All right? I've got on my Vimeo channel, vimeo.com/Mark Emery. If you want to learn how to operate the one true Supreme Court of the people and operate a township, we can learn a lot from the Montana Freemen. Go to vimeo.com/Mark Emery, and you'll see some tutorials that I've been able to uncover from what those guys were doing in the 90s. All right? So understand, at-law government is one thing, municipal corporation is something else. Okay? So how do we let these municipal corporations get their claws into us if we are truly men and women upon the land living in the republic at law? Well, most of us aren't. Okay? Many of us are learning how to do that, but most of us aren't. And probably many of you who are watching this don't even understand what I just said. But it's a very distinct study with historical truths that are easily discoverable. Okay, so we've got these municipal corporations digging their claws into us. How and why? Because we're operating in business as a corporation. Well, where does a corporation come from? And I'm speaking of corporations, partnerships, LLCs, any type of legal fiction that is granted and regulated by the state. Okay? So you probably understand the maxim at law that basically states that that which is created is governed and controlled by the creator. So when the state issues you the franchise privilege of operating with limited liability, that's the carrot that they induce you into signing up for corporations, registering corporate entities in whatever form. All right, we get induced into those benefits of limited liability, thinking that, oh, we need limited liability, so we end up operating a creature created by the state, which they now control. And so now, for you to operate that business, you need to have a license. You need to have permission. And guess what? To get that permission, you have to meet certain guidelines, rules and regulations, and above all, you have to pay for that permission. It's kind of like going to the Catholic Church and paying to have your sins forgiven. Okay? So you see how this is happening here. This is a really interesting study. All right, you've heard about the barber. He had his license stripped from him for going to work against the governor's orders. The governor's the head of the state, and we could argue whether he has the authority to issue those orders. That's another argument. But let's just say he's the head of state. He's the captain of the ship of that state, and since you signed up as a corporation, a corporate entity, you agreed to honor the rules of the ship and follow the orders of the captain. Okay? So when he says, "Oh, you disobeyed me, I'm stripping you of your license." Well, whether it's right or just, again, that's another issue. But you submitted to that framework of law when you applied for the license, when you started operating in commerce through a fictional entity, which is created by and governed by the state. All right? That's how they get their claws into you. It's all contract law. You've contracted with the state to obtain the benefits of limited liability and to get their permission to do commerce with the public. These are all key terms that we'll be using in just a second. Okay? So if you're engaged in commerce dealing with the public as a legal fiction controlled by the state, they have the opportunity, the right to control you in any way they see fit. And so that's the mistake that we make. We make the mistake of operating in that fashion. All right? So let's go back in history and look at how things were done before this became the norm in modern society. Okay? When have you ever needed permission from anybody to work outside of having a state corporation? You never had to have permission. You know, when you were a kid, you wanted to mow lawns, you went out and did that. All right? Heck, today, little kids can't even have a lemonade stand without getting harassed by the police for not having a permit. Why? How do they get away with that? Because we are all brainwashed, brain dead. We've forgotten history. We've walked away from our roots, our heritage. We've forgotten about the rights that millions of people have filled up boatloads of blood in dying for to protect those rights that these days we don't give a damn about anymore. We don't pay any attention to it. We don't worry about it. Oh, it's for the safety. That's communism. When the rights of the individual are sacrificed for the common good, that's communism. A true Republican form of government will protect the rights of one individual, no matter how unpopular that individual may be, regardless of what the common good might have to say, which, by the way, is democracy. That's another fallacy. We're not supposed to live in a democracy. That's mob rule. 51% of the people can vote to rob the other 49%. That's not operating in a state of law. That's mob rule. We're not a democracy. And every time I hear these politicians say, "Oh, we're the greatest democracy on the face of the planet," I just cringe. I just want to throw things at them. It's ridiculous. And worse, I get upset at you and us for accepting that, for not challenging that, for not standing up to that erroneous way of thinking, for that brainwashing, that false teaching, that lie, which is exactly what it is. All right? So what's the alternative? It's simple. Dissolve your corporation. Take that business license, take a black magic marker, and from the lower left corner to the upper right corner in big letters, mark void. On the back, do the same thing and write canceled. See, the simple fact of the matter is, when you applied for that business license, you were fraudulently induced into applying for it. How was it fraud? It was fraud because you were told that this is the only way to do business. If you want to do business, you have to do it this way, which is not true. That's fraud. You were fraudulently induced and you lacked informed consent. The Supreme Court issued in a case called Throckmorton versus the U.S. that fraud vitiates all contracts. In other words, any contract that rests on fraud is null and void, nunc pro tunc. Now for them. Ab initio, from the beginning. Okay? Going to give you a little Latin lesson here too. So the business license is fraud on its face. You nullify it, send it back with a letter saying I'm withdrawing my application based on fraud, and the corporation is hereby dissolved, and you get out of that corporate trap. You get out of dealing in legal fictions. That's in the public. All right? Start thinking about operating. And I don't even like to use that word operating because that's a commercial term. Working. You have the right to work. God gave you the right to work, and He gave the mandate that as stewards of His kingdom, we need to be working out in the fields. And blessed be the stewards who are out working in the fields when He returns. All right? Too many of us are sitting on the couch eating a bag of chips, watching the news saying, oh, isn't that too bad, and not doing a damn thing. And it's you pacifists who are sitting around doing nothing, who are going to watch your future just as you would a hot, steaming dog turd on the hot pavement. It's going to be scooped up and thrown into the trash if you don't do something about it right now. Which means not only do we turn back this fraud, in fact, Trump just said it today. He said this whole lockdown was staged. He came out and said it in public. He knows as well as anybody what's going on. And I only wish I knew why he has delayed to this point before doing anything about it. I really think he wants to expose the rats in the cellar so that the whole world can see who they are. And we're seeing who they are. And they're committing treason. We're at war. They've committed treason against the people. And so not only do we need to turn back this corruption, this fraud, this violation, this mass crime against humanity, but we need to hold these traitors accountable. All right? Now, that's another discussion. Let's get back to what we can do to operate our businesses. So you've canceled your business license. You have dissolved your corporation, your partnership, your LLC, and you've come out from underneath the jurisdiction of the state. You need to do some study, and we're not going to be able to teach it in this short video, but you need to start learning how to operate, how to manage your life in the private and not in the public. All right? Just a couple examples. First of all, if you have firmly held faith and beliefs of any kind, but let's just talk about Christian beliefs. For example, I can talk about that because that's where I place myself. What if you had a private ministry? You've heard about the doctrine of separation of church and state, right? State has no business in the affairs of the church. Now, that church ministry has every right to support itself in any way that it sees fit. Okay? Getting back to the barber example. Maybe the barber likes to talk to his clients. Maybe he likes to share the good word of the gospel. Share some testimonies about blessings and miracles he's received. All right? And no, I'm not getting religious. I can't stand religion. Religion is a divisive political tool that's used as another way of controlling people. There's a difference between religion and being spiritual. Understanding that, yes, there is a spiritual realm, a spiritual world that is dominated and was created by the one creator, our creator. That exists. And if you don't understand that, you need to open your eyes and open your ears, because the proof is everywhere. You don't have to look very far. But let's just say, all right, whether you're running a Christian ministry or a ministry that worships rocks, I don't care what it is, all right, so long as it's plausible and has some relative level of acceptance in the world, whatever type it may be, perhaps you worship Allah as a Muslim, okay. Set yourself up as a ministry. That ministry can support itself in any way it sees fit, all right? And now, rather than dealing with the public, you deal only with members. So let's say the Barber has a membership. For $15 a month, he'll send you a newsletter. He'll educate you on fashion and hairstyling tips with a weekly newsletter as a part of your membership. And oh, by the way, once a month for your membership fee, he'll give you a free haircut. Now, he's not selling haircuts. He's not engaged in commerce, dealing with the public. He's dealing only with private members. Many of you are very familiar with private member associations, PMAs. All right, and there's many businesses that can conform to that concept. Okay, I don't have a lot of time to get into all of that, but I'm just planting the seed with you that rather than dealing in commerce with the public, you simply deal in the private with your members. And rather than selling certain services or merchandise, those are included as a part of their membership. And your business is closed to the public. There's a sign on the door, closed to the public, members only. All right? So this is the type of thing that we get into. I started a church. I have a ministry. It's called the World Mission Church. The website is worldmissions, with an S on the end, .world. worldmissions.world. If these concepts appeal to you, these are the things we're teaching our members. And really, we have a mandate in the Bible that tells us to come out of her, my people. Do not participate in her sins, thus you will not share in her plagues. Look around the world. It's crumbling. We're in this mess because we've turned our backs on God. And He's allowing it to happen. Yeah, He is. He's not causing it to happen. We cause it to happen because we've turned our backs on God. And He's saying, well, all right, these people are very content and prideful and in many cases arrogant. They're very happy with themselves. They're fat. They're wealthy. They think they have everything they need and they don't need God anymore. Well, hello. Wake up. The world's in a mess, and this is all happening as a part of prophecy. So I'm sending out an appeal for those of you that have a conscience, those of you that will not tolerate this abuse of rights, who will not tolerate these tyrants getting away with what they're doing, as a means to really start changing the way that we take care of our own affairs. Now just think of it. If millions of people started doing this, what would happen to the tax revenue of the city and the state? It would pretty much dry up. They wouldn't have the money to do the crap that they're doing. And they'd have to start competing in the marketplace. All right? Now, there's a lot of questions that come up. There's a lot of issues that are raised, which we're not going to get into. But this is how we get stuck with these ridiculous mandates. We're wrapped up with state-issued legal fiction entities to operate a business, to deal with the public, and they have every right to regulate you. You've agreed to it. You've submitted yourself to that. What I'm suggesting, cancel those relationships, cancel those contracts, learn to work instead of do business. And one question that comes up, well, what about my liability? If I don't have a corporation, if I'm sued in a corporation, the only liability is to what the corporation owns and not myself personally. Well, if you followed the true teachings of Jesus, you wouldn't own anything. That doesn't mean you have to live under a bridge. All that means is you have nothing in your name. Your exempt church ministry might own the things that you could benefit from using. And you know what those are. Okay? So there's a way of handling ourselves in proper accordance with true law, with universal law, with common law, that is in perfect harmony with the Constitution. And anybody who would step on those rights is putting themselves in grave danger because of the legal liability that they would impose upon themselves. And insofar as that goes, there's a group that I'm going to put a link in the description box below. I want you to go look at it. They're putting out templates with instructions on how every one of us who has been affected by this, whose rights have been stepped on, needs to go after, legally speaking, the state attorney general, the governor, the local police enforcers who have stepped on your rights, if they have. I mentioned the state attorney general, the state legislatures, congressional representatives and senators, right on up the line. Anybody who has been involved in stepping on your rights, supporting these draconian, unconstitutional decrees, needs to hear from you in terms of a lawsuit being named. And this group is providing the templates. They've got attorneys to support this. They've got instructions, and they envision people all around the country filing these complaints, civil and criminal complaints in federal court. And eventually, when one state could have 1,500 different complaints filed, the judge would more than likely combine these complaints into one. And when you've got a small handful of defendants who are facing dozens, if not hundreds, of counts of criminal misconduct, we're talking some serious, serious business and accountability. So be sure to check out that link down below. You know what to do. I hope that this has given you a little bit of breath of fresh air with some hope, with an avenue that you can take to reclaim your freedom. You've got to reclaim it. If you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for you. All right? So this is a call for each one of us to get busy, get off the couch, and start fighting for the freedom that our forefathers have died and shed their blood for. How appropriate is that for Memorial Day weekend? All right, take care. God bless everyone. Let's live in freedom, shall we? Amen.